Okay, so day three, or sorry, day three, day five. This is the end of the week. Um, so it's been an interesting week for sure. This has been the first week out of the job. Um, I've continued to work on this side VR project, and I may have mentioned it a couple times in passing, and so it's one of the things that's been on my mind this week because as I left the job, my focus kind of switched over to, as I've mentioned, planning out school and future work potentials, and then any of my extra time on the side is focused on making sure that I'm continuing to make my contributions and providing any guidance, design, help, and general direction on that with Kelly and the rest of the team. So that's been a big sort of area of focus for sure, and I think that's probably going to be the case until mid-February. So this is one of the things kind of keeping on my mind going forward. But so some reflection on things that happened this week. I had plans to get some things organized, also just take some time outside of work and just focus on taking a breather. So that was one of the things I actually did today was kind of hike, like got out of town and actually went out to the mountains for a little bit, and that was really good. But something that has been on my mind repeatedly over the past week is trying to actually be intentional and present and mindful of when I am not actually allowing myself to relax. When I'm not giving myself permission to relax and fully sort of appreciate the time that I have made, this space that I have made for myself by leaving the work and creating a sort of gap here where ideally I actually use this to reflect and recenter. But what I tend to find, and I think a lot of people probably struggle with this as well, is that the job stopped, but general anxiety and concerns around things that need to be done and concerns like school and work and this side project and everything continue to float around even as I'm trying to go through the process of taking time off, taking time to have space from that sort of work and productivity mindset. So as I'm driving out into the mountains today, I repeatedly find myself falling into this trap of feeling kind of rushed and under a time crunch, which is a habit that I think tends to happen during that work mindset, but it really shouldn't be something that I bring along if I'm going to unplug, as it were, to try to intentionally step out of that work mindset and environment and take time to rest. The rest is not as effective if I don't do that. So like if I'm going to take time to go and get away somehow, whatever that is, whether that is going for a bike ride for an hour, or that is going camping somewhere else out of town in the mountains, whatever, for a few days, or it's a multi-week trip to go and visit family and whatnot. It's always a general problem and thing that I've had to be cognizant of not allowing myself to drift back in, not allowing the sort of anxieties and problems of other frames of thinking, work thoughts, preventing them from seeping into the time when you're supposed to be sort of relaxed and chilling out and allowing yourself to decompress a little bit and take that weight off of yourself. So I struggle with that. I think everybody, many people do, and all the time. So that's been tough. That's especially, I always find it tough when I'm not actually in a entirely secure situation. I know that I'm on a time limit right now. This time outside of a full-time job or full-time work, sustainable work, is temporary. It can't continue that way forever. I will have to figure out, specifically what things are going to contribute to. Hey, what's up there, AVM? Good to see you again. Yeah, I'm going to have to continue to keep this in mind and try not to let that anxiety creep back in, and be intentional about, this is time to decompress and not worry about all of this other shit and things I want to get done. And then this is time to get things done and worry about that stuff. But they need to stay separate. AVM, how are you doing? How have you been over the past few days, the past week? First ran into you on Monday when Mr. Pat was on here, but let's see. Some other, so to go backpedal a little bit for my own review here. On Wednesday this week, I had a sort of review with the team that I'm working with on this project, and I've been composing music for it. We've been building a VR story, virtual experience, and I've been involved from very early on in sort of the co-creation of that project, writing the initial sort of concept in detail in like a prose form, and then designing that experience over time. And now, as we've actually brought a whole team in, I've switched focus to the role of composing the sort of ambiance and music experience of it, which in VR is huge. It's like the sound is literally half the experience in VR. When things don't have that portion as a focus, it feels kind of broken. So it's even more important, I would say, than regular, 2D screen video games, traditional video games. So I've been focused on that entirely. And I'd done a bunch of iterations on a few different tracks, compositions thus far, and I'd spent a lot of time in my own head focused on this stuff, kind of like separate from the team. We've all been working remote, as many people have. But it was earlier on Wednesday this week, it was time to come together and look at and listen to this stuff in real time with a few other people on the call and get feedback on it and figure out, has this veered off in a totally different direction? How does this feel right now? This is a general, I feel like it's always a kind of painful process or a bit of an uncomfortable process. And I've experienced in this context with making music, but I feel like I've experienced this so many times when it came to building out a website for somebody or reviewing written like a paper or a story or something that's in progress. Basically, you have work, it's in progress, and you need to share it with somebody else and get feedback on it. And it's not done yet, but you want someone else's perspective. Maybe they're your client and you're making this thing for them. There is, every time, without fail, there's always this dynamic of, even if they realize it, they're going to point out a bunch of things that seem really obvious. And you're going to be like, yeah, I've had that in my mind and I just wanted to confirm with you now. And there's no way around that experience, I've found. If you're a designer and you're reviewing something for an app that you're working with a team to build, you have that experience. If you're developing, you're a software developer and you're literally building some sort of application, and you've been working on this feature and you share it with the rest of the team, there's inevitably going to be feedback from people that haven't been as deep into it and are not as sort of emotionally attached to it as you are at that point. And it's really easy for your kind of, as I'm going through this review experience on Wednesday, I feel ego sort of jumping up and wanting to defend my honor in this situation, of, I know that this stuff is not where it needs to be yet. And the thing that you just pointed out, I definitely realize that that's probably going in a different direction now. So it's always a struggle to sort of fight that back down and make sure that it doesn't become a problem. But I feel like I've gone through it so many times in so many different situations now that I felt that reaction wanting to come up, and I was like, I know what that's all about. So I'm just going to be quiet, explain what my thinking was at each of these different points throughout the composition, whatever the hell it was, and then sit back and let them give feedback on it. And just by nature, a ton of it's going to be redundant, but there will be little nuggets and insights or direction there that will kind of point me in the right direction going forward, or course correct a little bit. And it was important to just sit back and sort of let that happen. So that was that's like a major sort of thing I've been thinking about a lot this week, is just that sort of collaboration problem with people. I feel like it's even worse when you're remote, because there are longer periods of time, or it's much easier for there to be periods of time where you're completely blind. Like they don't know what you're doing because they're not passing by your desk if you had worked in the same space before, or you're not having an in-person sync on a regular basis to actually touch base and stay on the same page. So if that stuff isn't happening all the time via like remote calls and meetings and stuff, then it's completely invisible now. So it's hard. So that kind of stuff, general anxieties and things floating around in the back of the mind. Another thing that happened towards the end of this week is I watched that movie Soul that Pixar made recently or earlier this year. So there were some well, first off, just really enjoyed it. But there was a message from that I really appreciated right now, which was specifically around being present and not constantly chasing after a sort of, not getting sucked into the sort of long-term goal or thing that you're trying to strive after all the time. I think the analogy or the story that was actually cited in that movie, which I really liked, towards the end, was this idea that there's like a fish that is kind of swimming around underwater and goes to another fish and is asking around like, hey, you know, like I'm looking for the ocean. You know, like, you know, where is it? That's what I'm trying to find. And the other fish basically says like, hey man, you're in it, like the water, like you're in it right now. And he's like, no, this is the water. I'm looking for the ocean, the thing that is big and amorphous and far away. And that's where I want to get to. And I guess that's sort of, it is parallel to, or sort of an analogy to, that idea of like the journey versus the destination being the focus. So as I'm outside of the structured environment of a job right now, and I'm trying to set goals in place and keep myself straight, it was a great reminder to not get too stuck on the big picture goals here. Yes, I'm planning for school. I'm trying to make these like big life changes and whatnot. But it's also important to not get sucked into being discontent with the things that are happening right now and where I'm at right now. Because living in that way of just always looking to the next thing and far ahead, basically, it has in the past. It leaves me constantly dissatisfied with where I'm at. And so I'm always waiting to make that next step up. And then that's going to be when I'll be satisfied and happy. Inevitably, by the time I get there, though, it's something else is the next step. And then I'm like, okay, well, I made it this far, but I'm not even going to take time to appreciate that was progress. I'm just now fixated on the fact that I'm not over there even further along. So this has been, oh, shoot, the lighting just went down. This has been an important week to sort of take time, appreciate that, acknowledge progress. Yeah, and just be present and give myself that space. So yeah, I'm going to take a break from this for the weekend. So I will be back on Monday. ABM, hope everything's well on your end. I know you're, prepping for school and, well, getting out of school and big life things coming up soon. So hope all that's going well, but I will see you around.